BICS and CALP. BICS refers to basic interpersonal communicative skills. This is the kind of language that is used for everyday speech, and it's very basic and it's interpersonal. It's more about communicating with other people in an informal context. So a characteristic here are several characteristics of basic interpersonal communicative skills. First, it is context rich, meaning there are many extra linguistic cues involved. So there is the context, there is the situation, there are gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice, and even body language. So BIC's basic interpersonal communicative skills involve all those contexts, those extra linguistic devices and cues that add to the understanding of what a person is saying. BICS is what you use when you talk with your family members, with your friends, with people on the street. So it's kind of informal. It's also natural language. This is the language that you naturally use. It's not something you practice. It's not something you rehearse. It's not something you write down. It's something that just comes out spontaneously. The topics that you talk about using BICS are human interest topics. You talk about other people, you talk about your daily life, you talk about your situations. So those are three characteristics of BICS. So BICS, according to Timat and Pinigar, as they expound from Cummins, from Jim Cummins, BICS involves the basic language system used in face-to-face communication in informal contexts. This could be intimate or colloquial registers. When we say registers, it's a variety of speaking. It's a style. So it's intimate or colloquial style. And BICS is largely acquired in the native language by children in all societies by the age of 5. So basic interpersonal communication skills are acquired by children from their birth, right from their birth, all the way until around 5 years old. They've already grasped a good amount of language that they can use for natural communication. So by the way, BICS and CALP, BICS and CALP were pioneered by Dr. Jim Cummins. He was talking about two broad kinds of language. One for informal settings, the other one for formal settings. So this part here is expounded upon by Timat and Pinegar. Other characteristics of BICS include exclusion of literacy. So BICS doesn't include literacy. So you can have natural language even if you cannot write because it's mainly spoken. And BICS has to do with the vocabulary of conversations. You would probably realize that many words, many structures of ordinary conversations are not present in academic speech, but they are very much found in natural speech. There's a lot of contraction. Going to becomes gonna, cannot becomes can't, and there are many what we call idioms. There are lots of idioms in conversations. And being proficient with BICS has very little correlation with academic success. So if you're good with BICS, uh, it's just a small correlation, a weak correlation with academic success. Then we also have CALP, which is Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. This is the language used in school, in formal settings, in courthouses, maybe in serious business. Three salient characteristics of CALP is that it is context reduced, meaning those gestures, those changes of voice, those body language and facial expressions, they're not very much present in cognitive academic language proficiency because cognitive academic language proficiency has to do with school language. And because it's school language, it's academic. And we said that it's cognitive, so it has more to do with your brain than with facial expressions, than with body language. So it's cognitive, it's academic. It's used in school, it's used in formal discussions. So cognitive academic language proficiency is formal. Cognitive academic language proficiency is formal. Here are other characteristics of CALP. CALP includes formal and academic styles or registers of the language. So formal and academic registers of the language. So it's more formal. There's very little uh, contraction. There's very little idioms, and there shouldn't be any informal language. Okay, there should be very little informal language in cognitive academic language proficiency. Now, CALP is acquired mostly after the age of 5, and acquisition does continue through life. Now, the idea here is that at the age of 5, that's the time a child starts to go to school. And CALP is acquired through school. If you don't go to school, if you don't go to an educational context, then it's unlikely that you would learn CALP. Of course, there are homeschooled students, but that's still school. And so they acquire CALP. But if a child somehow doesn't go to school, that child will not learn cognitive academic language proficiency. But he or she will continue to speak using BICS. And CALP includes high levels of literacy. BICS does not require literacy, but CALP requires and includes high levels of literacy, being able to write complicated pieces of writing, being able to use complicated abstract nouns, abstract ideas. And CALP includes tens of thousands of specialized words, and these words relate to academic and formal register or style. So these specialized words relate to academic contexts, and therefore they are formal. And being good with CALP has a strong correlation with academic success. A person who is good in CALP would also be good in his academics, her academics. A person who is not good with CALP would also suffer academically. Okay, so we are comparing BICS and CALP, pioneered by Jim Cummins. Now, I think this is the last slide. Here are some academic uses of CALP. First is to manage classrooms, Like when a teacher says, "Everyone be seated, get into small groups, and discuss this question. What page did you ask us to look at?" Or to convey information through academic prose, academic speech. The following research methodology was used to examine the three hypotheses. So they're trying to express information using the kind of language used in school. CALP could also be used to frame test questions. Like, according to the reading passage, do you feel that John is A, guilty, B, or innocent? Choose A or B. So when you talk using BICS, you don't talk like that. But when you read tests, that's how they are framed. Also, CALP is used to engage in classroom discourse. So you talk with each of your classmates, your teacher, and maybe you could say, "I see your point, but I think, but I believe that." So these are academic uses of CALP. So it's very important that you use the right register, BICS or CALP, in the right situation. The classic analogy would be wearing beach clothes for going to the beach and wearing formal clothing for graduations. You will not wear you will not wear beach clothing when you go to a graduation, and you will not wear graduation clothes or formal clothes when you go to the beach. So in the same way, you don't use BICS in the classroom and you don't use CALP on the street. So if you try to use CALP on the street, people will find you weird or maybe even pretentious. If you use BICS in the classroom, people would think you are uneducated or rude or simply unable to relate. So that's basic interpersonal communication skills, BICS, and cognitive academic language proficiency. Oh, by the way, class, we as Filipinos, we tend to be more familiar with CALP, with CALP English. The version of English that we are familiar with as Filipinos is CALP English. We are actually more adept, more proficient at academic English than informal English because we learned our English mostly in school. On the other hand, many native speakers, they learn English in a natural environment. So they're very good at BICS. I wonder if you have ever experienced using English to talk with native speakers. You realize you are running out of words. Nauubos na yung English ko. That's because the English that you know is used in school, not much in informal conversation. Okay, so that's BICS and CALP by Dr. Jim Cummins.